is Graham Salisbury. I'm a bereaved carer. I've also been involved as a lay member of a research team looking at hospice at home services.
My name is Claire Butler. I'm a palliative care physician of many years' experience and also a clinical professor at the University of Kent. This video may be of interest to anyone, but in particular we're hoping that it will be helpful for people who are considering an end-of-life situation, either facing their own end of life or caring for or supporting someone else who's facing the end of life. I think it would be useful to think now about what we formally in sort of health and social care call advanced care planning, which you've already alluded to really, when you spoke about reaching that understanding together, that you are facing death and dying and that you want to do it together and you prefer to be at home. Not everyone will have those same preferences, but essentially that's the situation that we're mostly going to talk about in this video. So what other communication or advanced planning comes up once that initial discussion has taken place?
Yes, so once you've got to that stage, there are a number of things that are going on. For me personally, initially it was just doing the best you can to make the best of the situation. As this journey progressed, you need to recognise that others need to be involved. There could well be family members that could indeed have different views that you need to deal with. So you have to be speaking to them about the decision that you have made. You want to do your best to keep together in this, to keep as a unit, but then there are lots of third-party interventions as well, and sometimes they're very difficult to actually find in the circumstances that you're facing, because more and more you're involved directly with like patient care and looking after that loved one, and your whole life is starting to change. So you need to make sure that all the relevant parties have been included and informed, and start recruiting your team around you really as to who's going to be there for you in support of the situation. So there are legal considerations to be made, wills to be thought about. Is this person going to get to the point where they're in a situation where they can't make good judgments for themselves about their health, their property and financial situation, so lasting power of attorney considerations have to be made. And again, seek advice over all this, because there is no expectation on anybody to know these things. You can do all the research that is available apparently through today's technologies, but you're not necessarily going to be following a path that is most useful to your situation. So you must talk about it to as many parties as you can make contact with, and have those conversations, and therefore make decisions about the route that you're going to be following.
So there's a whole spectrum here that you've talked about, Graham, which is worth just going over again. So there are, if you like, conversations, formal and informal conversations, which you have with your partner, with the person you're caring for, or wider family, and that's all fine. Then there are issues, more formal issues, that actually need documentation, aren't there? Need writing down. So you've mentioned a lasting power of attorney, so that's someone who is legally able to represent you if you're no longer able to manage your own affairs, either financial or health. And that requires a lawyer or some formal intervention to get that sorted. Wills, likewise, need to be properly documented, witnessed and signed and so on. And then there are more specifically health-related documents like advanced care plans, as we would describe them, where it's written down what your preferences are, so that health and social care professionals can refer to something that will give them confidence that they understand and everyone understands exactly what the position is. And I suppose the ultimate is the do not attempt resuscitation CPR document, which causes all sorts of worries and anxieties for people, quite understandably, I think. But at some point probably does need completing in the sort of situation that we're talking about, so that unnecessary, futile, unhelpful, unpleasant interventions do not take place at a time. But equally, it's important for people to understand that all possible care and attention to what is needed at the time is still available, so that symptom management, care, compassion, dignity all continue regardless of whether a person is going to be resuscitated at the time when they die or doesn't want to go into hospital anymore. Nevertheless, our responsibility as health and care social professionals continue.
I think that's a very useful triggering arrangement as well, to have those more intimate discussions amongst the affected people. You know, they can act as opportunities to reinforce the plan that you're going to put in place to progress the journey that you're on.
Yeah. I mean, there's a whole range of issues which will be important to people at the time of death and dying, all of which could be documented if that was suitable, and certainly discussed. So I guess there are issues around where would you prefer to be cared for? Do you wish or not wish ever to return to hospital? What other sort of things might come up, Graham, that people would want to specify?
Yes, you're right, Claire. There's a number of issues that could occur. So these are all about the personal preferences, and in order to make that record absolutely clear, the best thing to do is to write them down. So there are matters of belief, spirituality, religion, culture, all these things that could be important to the person that is dying needs to be documented so that people can respect those wishes in the best way possible.
So I wonder if people may be anxious that their wishes and preferences, particularly the cultural and religious ones, may not necessarily be prioritised or recognised by some of the professionals who get involved in care.
This is one of the opportunities that the principal carer has now got. So during that time, a relationship really needs to be formed, a very strong bond between the professional group, the carer and the patient. So we've talked already about the patient-carer relationship. The bond of having that third party coming in, whether it's one person, single point of contact, or whether it's multi-point of contact, that relationship still needs to be a very firm and established bond. So if these issues exist, then they need to be expressed openly, in writing if that's appropriate, and continuously discussed. Because another issue, another matter that's going to occur is the changes that are going to go on during the period that this is having to be managed.
Yes. And the importance of this three-part relationship was something that came very strongly out of our research. The relationship and the communication between the patient, the person in the home, their informal carer, family member, and the professionals who are involved in coming in to provide care. And that three-way relationship, which works in each direction, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
So information may be being given by the professionals to the family at home, or in the other direction. And it's that three-part communication and trust that is so critical, isn't it?
Yes.
As you indicated, Graham, we're talking about an ideal situation here, and we know what works to promote the best possible outcomes. It's not always going to be that perfect, but nevertheless, let's aim for that. So we've got this three-way communication between the professional team or teams, the carer in the home and the patient. And that's the way that we want to manage all the things that arise on this journey through caring into dying. But of course, sometimes things will change along the way.
Very much so. What will happen is the circumstances will change physically. There might be material changes that you have to consider with things like your house needs to be completely changed around. There's physicality involved for both the carer and the patient in terms of their care indoors at home. So these have all got to be addressed, and therefore change is going to happen.
Yes.
And that's fine. That is part of it. And all those parties need to be aware that you might have one impression about the way this is going to go, but don't be surprised because it ain't going to follow that route right the way through so beautifully. It's going to be a changing feast. And everybody needs to accept that.
Yes.
And as soon as it happens, it could be an anxiety as well as a physical change.
Yes.
As soon as that happens, you've got to flag it up.
Yes. And I guess the change may also be a change of preference. It is quite possible that the wishes of the person, the patient, or their carer in the home may change at some point. And situation may arise where they say, no, at this point we feel we need to come into the hospice, or we feel we need to come into hospital, despite having wanted to stay at home. For one reason or another, our wishes have changed.
Yes. And it was my experience that that was necessary, because what happens is you get an episode, like you get a pain episode or a specific issue that can't be addressed in the home.
Yeah.
And therefore that visit away from the home, away from your desired outcome, has to be interrupted.
Yes.
And sometimes it's going to be the way it is, and that is going to be the conclusion. Other times we can readdress that, a cure, an improvement can be had back into your plan A approach.
Yes.
And that's fine.
Yes.
We hope you found the video helpful and supportive, and please make real good use of your local services.